Refunds are killing your profits as an Etsy seller, and you may not even realize it. So in today's video, I'm sharing secrets that we use as top Etsy sellers to avoid refunds. And trust me, it's probably not what you think. Almost no one on YouTube is talking about this. So before we get started, if you guys are new here, my name's Connor. My wife and I own multiple Etsy shops. We do this full time. We've done over $2 million in lifetime sales on Etsy. That big green number at the bottom there, that's our total lifetime sales as of September 30th, 2025. The screenshots at the top there, those are screenshots from two of our real Etsy shops and their lifetime data. So we're making these videos for three main reasons. Number one, to document our journey from where we're at right now, just over $2 million, all the way to $10 million and beyond. Along the way, we're going to be sharing what did work, what didn't work, and what we're actively doing in our own Etsy shops to help you guys. And then finally, full transparency. Selfishly, we're making these videos to attract other Etsy sellers just like you who align with our values and who want to work with us to grow their own Etsy shops. So let's jump right into today's video and talk about the secrets of how to avoid refunds. And by the way, if you guys haven't seen my last video that I just did, I broke down what the real cost of a refund is on Etsy, and the results were pretty alarming. So way worse than most Etsy sellers realize. And so if you guys haven't seen that, make sure you guys go back to that video and watch that, because I think it'll make this video even more important for you guys to watch. So let's jump right into it. And I think what we need to start with is why sellers issue refunds in the first place, right? And so what it all boils down to is fear. Whether that's fear of a bad review, or that's fear of bad interactions with your customer, right? It really boils down to fear overall. And so especially new Etsy sellers, even experienced Etsy sellers, when you get to these peak Christmas seasons, these peak holiday seasons, Christmas especially, when it gets really busy, the order volume gets really heavy and customers become concerned about delivery dates and they become overwhelmed with things going on in their lives. They honestly can be really mean and just rude to you as an Etsy seller. And a lot of times Etsy sellers, especially new Etsy sellers, panic when this happens and they get trigger happy and they start to issue these refunds. What it all boils down to really is fear, right? They're afraid of that negative interaction, of the customer having a poor experience with their shop. They're afraid of having a potential poor review. And in my opinion, people far too often, too quickly issue refunds. And one example, which happens very often, is during the peak Christmas season, the tracking updates on tracking numbers, whether you're shipping with USPS, UPS, or FedEx, it's pretty much the same across the board. Those updates on the tracking numbers are often very delayed, or they show very little information. And to customers, this becomes very concerning. And they'll notify you via message. They'll think maybe you didn't even ship their item when it's absolutely been shipped. And what ends up happening, a lot of Etsy sellers will panic during these situations and just issue the customer a refund. And very often that item ends up getting delivered a couple days later. So what you're left with is negative profits. You paid for the item, you issued the refund, your customer gets their item, but they get the free product. And so in this video, I want to talk to you guys about how you can avoid those scenarios and keep your profit margins healthy. So these are the two main issues. They all revolve around fear. There may be others, but I think they all boil down to fear, whether it's reviews or interactions with your customers. And so the next thing I want to cover is there's essentially three types of order issues. If we boil down all the order issues into three buckets, I think these are the three. So the first is shop manager mistakes. That's pretty obvious, right? That's you made the mistake yourself. We call ourselves the shop managers. And so let's say you're personalizing a graphic, you do a typo in that graphic, or you copy and paste the wrong thing, or you upload the wrong graphic when you submit the order. That would be your mistake, right? And so for these specific issues right here, shop manager mistakes, those you want to reduce at all costs, right? But those you can control yourself. And so if these things happen, you absolutely should do right by your customer and issue refunds or send replacements, right? Those were your mistakes, things that you could control. You want to limit them, but if you do make the mistakes, you should do right by your customer. What I want to focus on in today's video is these two buckets right here. And so I'm going to look at my notes a little bit here as we go. And so what falls under the production partner mistakes is really things like broken items, also wrong product, also quality. So if there's a misprint or just the quality is really bad. Another thing that falls into this is oftentimes you'll see that the label was printed, but then the item really wasn't shipped. And so you'll see a pre-transit label goes 3 or 4 days, nothing, no updates. That often means that the item just was lost in the production center, wasn't shipped. And so all of these things that fall under this bucket, the production partner mistakes, production partners, print-on-demand production partners, will issue refunds or replacements when any of these things happen. Whether you're working with Printify or Inner Circle Prints, if you have a broken item, if they send the wrong product, if there's poor quality, like there's a misprint, it's clear that there was a misprint on the item. If the item just wasn't shipped and that's shown by the tracking number, any of these 4 things happen, your production partner will issue a refund or send you a replacement. And so the point is that refund or that replacement, those funds aren't coming out of your wallet, right? You're not covering the cost for a refund or a replacement in any of these situations. It's different than a shop manager mistake where you had a typo or you uploaded the wrong graphic and it was your mistake. If it's a production partner mistake, you don't cover the cost. And I want to iterate this. This may seem simple and obvious to some of you guys who've been around for a while, but I see this many times with new Etsy sellers that they end up issuing the refund out of their Etsy account and taking the hit on orders for things like this, not realizing that they can submit a help request to their production partner to recover the costs or get a replacement or a refund for those orders. So that's the second bucket here. The third bucket is shipping items. And so there's really 2 issues that happen in terms of shipping. So there's late delivery. And then the second thing is lost in mail. And thank you guys for bearing with me with my bad handwriting and me learning how to use this new tablet. Like I've said in previous videos, I'm trying to just give you guys raw value, authentic content, and just value dump on you guys. And so if I take a sip of water like this, I'm not going to edit it out of the videos. I'm just going to keep going. I think the most important thing here is value, and I think you guys appreciate that value. So continue to let me know in the comments, by the way, if you guys do appreciate this type of content. I really want to help you guys and provide the most value possible in the best way. So we'll keep going here. So the 2 typical issues that fall under the shipping issues bucket are either late delivery, so the item arrives late, or the item is lost in the mail. And what I mean by late delivery, when a customer places an order on Etsy, at checkout, they're going to be shown an estimated delivery date range. And this estimated delivery date range is determined by your processing time and your shipping time profiles that are assigned in your listing and past performance. Etsy will maybe potentially slightly modify that estimated delivery date range depending on your past performance and how quickly you're shipping out items. But in general, it's controlled by that processing profile and the shipping profile. So the customer is very aware when they order what their estimated delivery date range is. Now, that's really important, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes here. But the second one is lost in the mail. And so that one is pretty straightforward, right? So you'll see this on the tracking updates. The item will seem to not ever make its way, or it'll take a very long time to get to the final destination. It'll bounce around multiple cities, maybe go back and forth. And at that point, when it's been, a couple weeks, the item usually is going to be lost in the mail. And so what do we do in these situations? Do we issue the customer a refund? Do we send them a replacement immediately? What do we do? That's the big question. And so that's what I want to talk about in more detail in this video, is specifically this bucket here. These two situations, because we've talked about the shop manager mistakes. That's your mistake. You should do right by your customer. We've talked about the production partner mistakes. They will absolutely issue a refund or a replacement so you can recover those costs. But what do you do with shipping issues? When there's late deliveries, there's delayed deliveries, things seem to be lost in the mail, which if you guys haven't gone through a Q4 season, it's going to become very regular and a very common thing that happens as we get later in this Christmas season. It gets pretty hectic, especially among USPS and UPS and FedEx. All the shipping carriers experience delays, and it becomes very overwhelming to do customer service on Etsy during this time of year. So I want to help you guys out and tell you guys exactly what we do and how we avoid these refunds for these two scenarios here, late deliveries and lost in mail. So essentially what we do is we heavily lean on the Etsy seller protection program. So I'm going to jump over to my other screen here. And so if you guys aren't aware, if you've never heard of the purchase protection program for Etsy sellers, you guys can go check out this link. It's an article on the Etsy page explaining all the rules, all the things that you need to do to be eligible to qualify for the protection program and what it'll cover. And I'm not going to read through all this right here, but I'll post the link down in the description so that you guys can check it out. They cover up to $250, orders up to $250. Etsy will issue refunds. And oftentimes they double this heading into the Christmas season. So pretty soon here, we may see that Etsy does an update to this and they increase this to $500 during the Christmas season. They've done that in past years. We'll see if they do that again this year. It would be nice, but something to keep in mind that this program covers orders up to $250. So let's jump back over to our other view here and talk a little bit more about the seller protection program. And so essentially the seller protection program is going to cover us for either of these situations. Now, the caveat is for the late delivery. So late delivery. We need to make sure that our item was shipped on time. So when a customer places an order, you'll see in your order section a ship by date. So the ship by date is really important. And it's super important that you guys ship your items on time, that you hit these ship by dates. Because if you do, then you qualify for the Etsy seller protection program. So if an item arrives late, if it arrives past that estimated delivery date that's shown on the customer's order, and you guys can see this on the order. If you click on the order details within your order section in your shop manager, within the back end of your Etsy account, you can see what that estimated delivery date is, what the customer sees as well, and what they saw when they placed their order. As long as you ship on time before that ship by date, which is determined by your processing time and your processing profile, as long as you do that, the item arrives late, past the estimated delivery date, Etsy will fully cover the cost of refunding that customer. So they'll still get their item. It'll just arrive late, but the customer can get a full refund for that item because it arrived late, because the item was delayed in shipping and that was out of the seller's control, right? They shipped on time. It's now in the hands of the shipping carrier, and if it was delayed, that's out of the seller's hands. And so Etsy has an amazing program, and I hear almost no one talking about this. And it honestly is a huge secret. A way that we avoid refunds is leaning on this program. So I want to encourage you guys to lean on the Etsy seller protection program for instances like this, whether it's late delivery or the item is lost in the mail. So what your customer needs to do is file a case on Etsy. to qualify for the seller protection program, for the customer to get a refund, they need to file a case. And so the typical process, what they need to do, the customer, so your customer, you don't initiate this. You have to instruct your customer to do these steps. And so I'm going to outline the process here. So the customer first is going to submit a help request. And so that will come to you in the form of a message. So they'll submit a help request. You'll see a message come in. You can respond to that message just so you don't get dinged by Etsy for the 24-hour response time. But essentially, they need to first submit a help request. So they may come to you outside of a help request, right? Just through normal messages at first. And if they do qualify for a case, right? If it's one of these two scenarios that we talked about, if they do qualify, you should instruct them to first file a help request. After they've filed the help request, Etsy requires them to wait 48 hours. So there's a little bit of delay, a little bit annoying on the customer side that they have to wait 48 hours, but Etsy puts this buffer in, especially for the instance where it appears items are lost in the mail, right? And so oftentimes items will show up within those next 48 hours. And so Etsy has this buffer to account for that and to allow items to actually turn up. And so one of the other things I want to highlight quickly that I forgot to talk about was lost in mail. So this also includes like items that are delivered. So the tracking number shows delivered, but not found. Not found. So the tracking may show delivered, but the customer can't locate the package, right? And so that also qualifies in this lost mail category here. Just wanted to highlight that. So let's go back to our case process here. So they filed the help request. They've now waited 48 hours, and now they can submit the case. And so when they submit the case, you guys may see this pop up on your dashboard. There'll be a little notification in the help section. Maybe you've seen this before, maybe you haven't, but it will pop up. There'll be a notification that a case was submitted against your shop. And oftentimes, if it's one of these two scenarios that we've talked about, it'll get resolved so quickly that you may not even see it, right? So if it qualifies for the Etsy Seller Protection Program, Etsy, one of their administrators will go in on the back end, review the case, and resolve the case. So if it qualifies for the Seller Protection Program, they're very quickly, like I said, sometimes you're not even going to see it. They're going to resolve this. They're going to issue the refund to the customer. And the big thing here is Etsy covers the cost. So those funds do not come out of your wallet in Etsy. You still get paid for that order as if you still made the order, which you did, right? You shipped the product. It was just lost or delayed in the mail significantly. And so Etsy, because of their amazing program that they have for us sellers, they cover the cost of those orders. So like I said, it's an amazing program. I don't think many Etsy sellers realize this or use this program at all, but we heavily lean on it during this, especially during the peak Christmas season when it gets so crazy and so hectic. So I would encourage you guys to start leaning on this process and using this workflow and encouraging your customers to do this so that you don't issue the refunds out of your own funds. And so essentially, we encourage our customers to follow this process. We'll even send them a link. You guys can send them a link, and I'll include that in the description below as well. It's basically a link that walks through how to submit a case. It'll tell them that they need to first submit a help request, that they need to wait the 48 hours, and then they need to submit the case. And so the next thing that I want to highlight for you guys, just to reiterate, is that $250 limit. And so the limit that Etsy will cover is $250. So this is something to be aware of. And like I said, they may increase this as we head into the Q4 season. They have in the past, they've doubled it to $500, but just something to be aware of. If you do have bigger orders potentially coming in. And we've had sellers we've worked with, coaching clients, who have taken this approach, and it's worked quite well. They've had customers place their orders in a couple batches to keep each order under the $250 limit so that it does qualify, each of those individual orders qualify for the seller protection program. So let's say, for example, I don't know, you have a $700 order coming in. You could have your customer potentially place an order for $250, $250, and then $200. And so all three of these would qualify for the seller protection program. As long as you ship them on time, and if the item was, or the order, the shipment was lost or delivered late, Etsy would cover the refund for each one of these. And so, like I said, we lean on this process heavily. What's really nice about this is the customer can go through this process, and in parallel, right? They don't need to necessarily wait for the case to be resolved, but you can encourage them, submit the help request. You're going to have to wait 48 hours. Then you'll be able to submit your case and you'll get that refund. In parallel, if you want to go ahead and place a new order, we'll get that shipped out right away. And so the huge benefit for you is now you got two orders, right? Etsy still counts that as an order. You still get the funds, even though they covered the refund. And so now you've got two orders. And so it can work out. It's basically a win-win for you as the seller, and just a great program. I can't emphasize that enough. And so the last thing that I want to highlight here, people may be concerned about the cases. They're like, maybe I'm wondering if that hurts my shop, if there's a negative impact, if a bunch of cases are being opened against my shop. And the really cool thing here is if Etsy determines that it wasn't your fault as the seller, so essentially if it falls into one of these buckets that we've been talking about, late delivery, lost in the mail, delivered but not found, if it was out of your control and Etsy deems that it wasn't your fault as the seller, Etsy covers the refund like we've been talking about, but they don't count it as a negative case against your shop. So if you look in your customer service stats, you'll see a case percentage. So Etsy will track the percentage of cases that are open against your shop. These types of cases where it's deemed not your fault as the seller, these do not count negatively against your shop. And so you shouldn't be afraid to use this process at all. It should have no negative effect in your shop. Like I said, we very often use this process in our own shops, and it really helps us avoid those refunds and recover the costs for things that really just weren't in our control. And so hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. If you guys haven't seen that video that I did earlier this week that talks about the real cost of issuing a refund on Etsy, I would highly encourage that you guys watch that, because I think it's going to surprise you guys a lot just how bad the numbers are when you do issue a refund. So thanks for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for you guys. Best of luck in this Q4 season.